know if you've experienced trauma, it's trapped inside your body. Well, today we want to help you gain a greater understanding of how your past hurts and hang-ups are impacting you physically, and that's why we have Christian psychotherapist Michelle Croyle joining us today. She's the owner and executive director of Abundant Freedom Counseling in the greater Pittsburgh area. Michelle, it is such an honor and a joy to have you with us today.
Hi, nice to be here with you. Thank you.
And so, Michelle, you have an interesting career path because you were a journalist at one point and then got into counseling. So can you tell us how God laid that on your heart?
Yeah, so I was kind of wanting to help people. I knew that when I graduated from high school, but what really set it off was I went into my undergrad and was like, I'm not ready to deal with this yet. I'm not ready to deal with people's problems. And made my minor my major and ended up being a journalist, public relations person, and then ended up saying, I don't want to ask people about how they feel when their house burns down. I want to actually help them when their house burns down. Yeah. But it's still the same thing. It's still asking questions, and it's still just kind of figuring out how to help people, how to understand where they're coming from and get to the root of it, because a lot of people don't know how to listen. So the same skills from journalism came into to trauma therapy.
Well, it's beautiful how God intertwined the both of them, and it's so important that we get to the root of things that we're dealing with. But can you just explain what a psychotherapist is and what you do and what you deal with?
Yeah, okay, so psychotherapy is a bit deeper than typical counseling. So counseling might be skill set, it might be what's next, how do we navigate this. Psychotherapy is we're going down into the roots, we're dealing with the stuff that's really still stuck in the body, still stuff that we just can't kind of get past logically or on our own. It's just going a level deeper and processing, like really rooting it out and giving the skills that need to be there to kind of heal it.
You know, that was something that was mind-blowing for me is when I started hearing about this whole thing of that trauma's trapped in the body. I think a lot of times it's like, oh, it's just my mind or my emotions, but it's actually trapped there. Can you unpack for us what it means that trauma is trapped in the body and that science that is behind it?
Yeah, well, so basically what happens is when you have something that's overwhelming to your nervous system, so it's like too much for too long, too little for too long, or not enough at the right time, too much too soon. Basically, when those things happen, your system it gets overwhelmed, it doesn't know what to do with it, so it fragments, and it stays in different parts of your system. So you might have a sound memory, or a smell memory, or body tension, or something like that, or you may have an actual thought memory. But what's happening in there is you're getting all of this stuff kind of vying for attention, but you don't necessarily feel safe in your body enough to regulate it, so you don't know what to do with it. It's just overwhelming. And then time goes on, and that gets stuck in your body. If it's never been actually processed so that you know the threat's over, you don't know that you're safe to move on. So then it comes back in nightmares, comes back in triggers, comes back in flashbacks, as if you're experiencing it again, because your system doesn't know where to file it.
And that's a key word, triggers. Can you talk about the triggers that we can experience? Because a lot of people are walking and dealing with trauma in everyday life. I know that was something with me I had when going through therapy. You know, I went through childhood sexual abuse, and so I didn't know I was walking and these things were happening. So can you break down the triggers that somebody's dealing with trauma, what it looks like and what it'll do?
Yeah, so typically, well, I can give you an example from my own life, like right now, okay? So one of the things that happened to me when I was growing up was being bullied for my height. And so I thought that was a big problem. Like, I'm shameful. There's something wrong with me. I can't be, I'm not valuable enough. There's something wrong with me. And then we walked in and you're like, I forgot we're the same height. And I'm like, yeah, that's not a trigger. She's not threatening. It was a camaraderie thing, right? Mm-hmm. But that shame, that part wanted to go, I'm going to hold it in, and I don't know what to do with this. They're not safe. They're going to hurt me. Like, no, that's not true. Well, that's because I've done a lot of my own work and a lot of stuff. What I internalized as the message, you're faulty, you're wrong, it was kind of the trauma of, I'm not good enough. Other people can be the same height or shorter, but I'm the one who is inherently flawed. And being able to just sit there and go, I was like, wonder if God's going to bring that out today. Because when we bring stuff out that we feel ashamed of or that we don't talk about and call it out and say, that's a lie. That's not God's truth. God has better for us than the lies the enemy tries to tell us to hold us back and such. And I'm like sitting here all relaxed with you, and I'm just like, cool, we're awesome height. And you know, everything is great. But there was a time where my system would have said, I hate them, they hurt me, or I want to go hide, or I don't know, I feel like insecure or whatever. And now I'm like, oh, look, hey, the television cameras are on me, it's okay. And that's to prove that trauma can be healed, but in the body, what it's trapped in as far as, what does this say about you? What is it telling you? What is it hurting you? Like, if you don't know when you're in the midst of that pain, when it's actually first happening, that it's over, like that, maybe that moment of bullying or that moment of sexual assault or whatever is over. You're safe now. Like, there is no one hurting you here. I'm sitting with Sydney and she's fine. She's like for me, not against me, right? As we sit there, I go, oh, it's over. It gets a timestamp, but our body doesn't know that it can get a timestamp if it's in trauma, and that's where those triggers come from. It doesn't know that we can put it to rest, that we're safe now. And so anytime it feels like that, we go into fight or flight, or freeze, or fawn, which is, you know, oh, you're the most wonderful person, even if you're like kidnapping me and keeping me away from my family, right? Those are the types of things that our systems do just to survive. But then when they're still there, and they're trying to keep us to just survive, that doesn't let us thrive. And so freedom is going, it's over. Yeah. We're safe. Let's move into freedom. And I believe God has that for everybody.
It's important to do that trauma work. And can you talk about the trauma model that you do, and it's called EMDR? Can you break
EMDR.
that?
Yeah, everybody messes up the initials, and that's okay. It stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. And so basically you start with stabilization. You start with giving someone a felt sense of safety in the present moment. You give them skills to ground, grounding being, I can be safe in my body, I can relax, I can just, you know, and there's tools for that. And then we also are getting a history of people's kind of pain points. So for bullying, you go, okay, so what are the bullying things that stand out in your mind? This, and this, okay. And then we say, okay, what was the worst about that? And what was the message you got about yourself? And at the same time as they set that up for location of the body, so you would go, what image represents the worst part of that? What message did you get about yourself, the negative belief? What would you like to believe instead? How true does that feel to you right now? And then you go into what emotions do you have in your body right now? How disturbing is this whole memory to you right now in the present? And then what location in your body is it? And as the person is kind of like aware of all that, they're toggling between their logical mind, their body mind, their memory, their feeling, their felt sense. So you're incorporating all of those. Remember I said it was fragments. So you're incorporating all of those fragments and they go together into everything's processing. But they do it with eye movement or with taps. So you can do it with taps like this, any kind of bilateral stimulation or pulsars. I have a ball, I work virtually, so there's a ball that I make go back and forth on the screen. And so basically people watch that while they hold that information, and we'll do sets of, hey, follow that, notice that, let them go for about 40 seconds, say take a deep breath in and release, what do you notice now? And then they tell us, and I say, okay, go with that, and we go. And if I feel like they're getting stuck because they didn't have that adaptive information, which is what we're trying to bring in from the normal everyday experience that like, this is over, we have new skills for this, you're not faulty, whatever those messages are, you're safe now, it brings it in because you're staying in the present focus. So you're toggling between the past and the front, you know, the present. And you have to be aware that some people dissociate, so like they might get lost in the trauma and get flooded and overwhelmed. EMDR allows you to do that in segments so you make sure they're present with you. It's amazing what comes out. People will come out with worship songs. People say they feel closer to God. People will notice how, you know, they have these resources and they didn't realize it, the lies they were believing, and it sets you free. It's so cool. Yeah.
And break down self-agency, because I know that's a big word in the therapy world, but it's important for us as Christians to understand.
Yeah, so we have a capacity to do our own thinking, have our own voice, have our own experiences, you know, do what works for us. But when we're traumatized, we often feel that we don't. So following through with those things, learning that we can have a voice, like when I just shared something with you now, and went, I can put that to words and I can know that I'm okay and there's nothing to be ashamed of. You can put to words now that, hey, I had that abuse in my past, and I can say that out on television cameras and not be ashamed or embarrassed, and I can say I was even angry, right? It's that ability to really own it and go, I'm okay. I can do this. I have a voice, I have a choice, and that's how you get out of trauma.
There was a scripture that was like in your heart that really relates to everything that you're talking about.
I don't know, there's many.
It was like, think on these things, everything.
Oh, yes. In Philippians, right. Think on what's good, pure, lovely, and true. Yeah, think on what's good, pure, lovely, and true. And that is one big thing, is to really take every thought captive and to know what's good, pure, lovely, and true. And then just also know that God is for you, not against you. He loves you, and He's got good stuff in your heart that He is putting there, right? The heart can be deceptive above all else, but His Spirit can regenerate our hearts and our lives. And so if you feel like it's a spiritual problem, you're like, I'm praying this away, I'm trying to pray this away, why isn't this gone? It's not because you're necessarily doing anything spiritually wrong. It's because there is an enemy who comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And God came to give you life and give it to you abundantly. John 10:10 is like my favorite verse. So you're not faulty if you can't get past it. You're just human, and God made the body miraculously, but it heals just like a cast sets a broken arm. The body heals when you have the right tools and the right treatment. It is possible. Healing actually is possible. I'm proof of it, or I would not have shared that pain point from the past right now sitting here. But you can get past whatever those shame, pain things were, and it's so freeing. It's so God.
And what would you say to the person who's watching right now that they're like, you know what, I really want to find a therapist? What are some of the things that I need to look for, or a psychotherapist? How do I go about that?
Well, there's a difference between a counselor and a therapist, and counseling is good and counselors are great, and I do counseling as well as psychotherapy. Basically, if you're looking for a counselor, you want to make sure that they mesh with you. There are so many people that call and say, hey, my counselor just sat there and listened to me talk. Well, then I went home and nothing changed. And I'm like, yeah, because it's not a logical thought word system. That's a whole different body part of the brain, where it's an intrinsic thing. You have to have a felt sense in your body of that empowerment and that safety. They need to be doing that work with you. You can't just talk it away.